Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Are the people of Western Europe, Central Europe, and even in the Eastern Europe, Canada, United States, Australia, and New Zealand, are you guys ready to fight in Ukraine against the Russians? Well, if you are, and you justify that by your values being attacked, or you think that the Russians will come and take your women, enslave your children, and kill you, well, that's a way of seeing the world. Good job, mass media. Now, if you say, well, that's my duty, if my country calls for my services, I will go and do it. Well, that can't really work that nice, because if you remember at the Nuremberg trials, when the German war criminals were charged, convicted, and hanged, most of them. One of the officers over there, one of the officers' argument was, we just followed orders. Well, the prosecution did not accept that, and the judges, by saying, well, you have an ethical, a moral duty to refuse following an order, that it's immoral. So the same is for you. It's immoral to follow an order, that you find immoral. So you can say, well, I'm not going to do it because I find it immoral to be told that I'm fighting for my freedoms and rights and for the defending the Ukrainians, when actually I'm fighting for those interests. Well, if the mass media does its job pretty well, then you would not even think that there's a different view on things or a different take on reality. After all, we are in this war in Ukraine, not just because Russia invaded unprovoked. There's many other things that occurred before that. I will just go briefly over a few. Kiev, the guys in charge of the Ukrainian nation, refused to abide by the international law, which was the legal binding document of Minsk I and Minsk II agreements. They were supposed to. They didn't. There were people killed in the East Ukraine, Russian speaking as they like to put it, by the government. And that was supposedly supposed to stop with the Minsk I and Minsk II. Now the guarantors, Germany and France, failed, and not only failed, they failed, I think, willingly to be the guarantors. So they were unsincere in their signing the documents with the Russians and the Ukrainians in 2014, 2015. Then we have the training and CIA and the training of Ukrainian troops and military investments in Ukraine in the period, buying time so these guys can invade unprovoked. Then it was the 2014 coup of a legitimate democratically elected government of Ukraine, helped by the forces of democracy. Then it was the 2008 statement of George W. Bush that one day Ukraine will be part of NATO. Well, that contradicts the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, when it clearly says that Ukraine would be neutral. Once you don't become neutral, you would be unprovoked. You will have an unprovoked attack from the Russians, which again were the guarantors, together with the Americans, I think the British, of those 1994 Budapest Memorandum meetings. So the history doesn't start here. And besides, we can go to 1991, when some made a gentleman promise or gentleman agreement that they will not expand NATO towards Russia. And they did. 5 times already? So again, a history doesn't start in the 24th of February 2024. Now, I think I'm getting to the place where I would not be asked to fight, being too a geezer, old. But you will be called to fight. I would say within a year, the NATO troops will be, and not only, will be involved in the war in Ukraine. If Ukraine is losing, that is losing ground, that is losing. And that would be legal, would be saying, well, for our own security, we will do this? And you're going to have a lot of people who would say, yeah, based on what I said at the beginning of this video. I will show you here 2 articles, but let me start with the article. I want to start with this one as a second one. I will start with the first one. Here, Reuters. Russia warns of direct clash with West over Ukraine. When do you take a warning or a threat made by someone else seriously? Well, there's a few, you have to take into consideration a few things, right? First, is it possible that that person could harm me? Is the situation in reality that this guy or that entity could really do something about it? Is it willing? Is it consistent? Well, all these things exist. Russia has been consistent in saying we're going to do this, and they did it. Not only with the sanctions, with the escalation of the war. The Russians can hurt us. And direct clash is right there. Remember, it was an escalation since February 24, 2022. These guys sent, first what was juveniles, and then they sent howitzers, and then they sent short-range missile systems, then they sent armored vehicles, then mid-range, and then long-range missile systems, and they sent tanks. Before they sent tanks, they sent HIMARS, then they sent Patriot systems, air defense systems. Then they send tanks. Now they're talking about they will send airplanes, F-16s. They have troops over there under different names. They have not only CIA, special troops, and now they have supposedly want to send more and more. They call it military advisors. They are just going to advise. They give them billions of dollars. They send more weapons. You see, all this is an escalation. Do you think they will stop at not engaging Russia in a World War II, they hope, war? I think that's exactly where it's going. It's like you take a ball and you throw it in one direction, it goes bum, 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 bum. You can see the direction where it's going, and it's going towards that particular point. And on its path, it's going to be juveniles, howitzers, and so on, until they get to what? To direct conflict. And I'm going to show you on the structure of we fight for our freedoms. Our security is at stake. Russia can't win because if it wins, that means our security is threatened. That means we personally, as countries in the Western Europe, the Western world, the United States of America, will be threatened. So we can't allow that. So they will get to this point when the Russians will be winning in Ukraine, and these guys will tell the baboons, now you have to fight, because as we told you for 3 years or 4 years, these guys are going to go and get your women and your children and you. They're going to desecrate all your graves, and your history, your traditions will go just like this. And you don't want to have that happening. Now let me show you the second article that I have. And this is a guy who obviously itches for war, because without war, the generals, the military, is a second-class job. They're over there, have no importance, nothing like that, unless they come to life like a judge when he's in court. A judge in the street is just another human being. In court, a judge is a god. So a general without a war is like a captain, ship captain without a ship. Once you give him the ship, and he's the captain with the crew. So that's where he feels important, and he is important there. So remember, was it Tojo? I think Tojo was the defense minister of Japan during the Second World War. He was a general, if I remember correctly. And at one meeting, imperial meeting, before they started the war, before the 7th of December 1941, attack on Pearl Harbor, he said, I am military, I'm a warrior, I'm a Bushi. Not Bushi, that I'm from Bushi, the warrior. I'm a warrior, I'm a samurai, whatever. And my job is to fight wars. So it's like a tool. A gun is supposed to shoot bullets. Now, how you use it, that's a different story. And by whom? For good or for evil? So let me show you this little article, one of many, with this kind of people, like this old guy who had no 15 minutes of fame in his life. He didn't have it. Why? I personally never heard of him. Now I do. So now he has them. Now, it doesn't mean that if I didn't hear, people might say, well, you didn't hear because... No, I hear about people that I never heard because right now it's their 15 minutes of fame. Why? It's the right time for them to shine. And now it's this guy's time to shine because he is itchy for something. What do you think that is? Action. Action being a Napoleon, but not in the front, on a Napoleon thousands of miles back. That's how are our Napoleons. Behind the scenes, far away, you can't touch them, but they are the big warriors. No, you're not. You're not warriors. Anyway, decisive moment. What does that mean? General Brigadier says military support for Ukraine pacing up. So, EU member states understand that the criticality of the current moment and the need to speed up arms supplies to Ukraine, so the offensive Russia is expected to launch this summer fails. So it's according to the chairman of the EU Military Committee, General Robert Brigger. I said Brigadier here? General Brigger. I'm sorry, I said Brigadier, General Brigadier, who spoke with journalists. And I'm going to the last sentence here, which is, hey, cat, you want to play now? This is the last sentence. That is the most important. That's the pinnacle. Remember, when you read a book, when you watch a movie, our brain is wired this way, to remember the beginning and the end of the story, more than the bulk, the center, the middle. So when your mommy tells you a story when you go to bed, or you watch a stupid movie, you most likely will remember the beginning of the movie or the end. So I'm going to give you the end of this because that's what's important. As Ukrinform reported earlier, General Robert Brigger previously stated that Russia should not win its war of aggression against Ukraine. Cannot win. And now it's where they include the Europeans, it concerns the security of all of Europe. I think that's a lie. That's my personal assessment. So he lumps Russia's victory with the security of Europe. What does that mean? That means that if the Russians advance, these guys have to push the button. I saw a lot of imbeciles saying that this is we are at war. This is a pre-Second World War a situation where we try to appease Putin as we did with that guy. What does that mean? Intervene. That's the next logical step. And they're building on it. They're building on it, and they will do it. Unless Russia collapses tomorrow and direct intervention will not occur, that's exactly where the ball goes on the court if you just toss it. Pim, 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 pim. That's the direction. That's the vector. So, my friends, think about it. I think that within a year, not even a year, I would say less than a year. I would say 5 to 6 months. If the Russians continue what they're doing, and these guys cannot stop the Russians, we, the Western countries, will have active troops legally deployed in Ukraine. Legally. Now, what do you think the Russians will do? Do you think they're going to fight a conventional war? Because this is what these guys want. Why should they fight a conventional war? After all, it's been done before by the Americans. So why should they play like the Americans dropped 2 atomic bombs? Do you think the Russians would not use them? Why? Remember, when do you really believe or take into consideration someone's threats? Remember, a rat cornered by a cat will jump to attack the cat with whatever it has. Do you think the Russians, which are not the rat here, the Russians can fuck us up as we can do the same thing? Why would they just sit on something that will just solve their problem in a crazy way? But hey, they will try to do it limited, like Americans in the Second World War. And it was not limited whatsoever. Remember, the American administration, let's put it this way, at that time, they told the Japanese, you either surrender unconditionally, that means you pants down, bent over, and wait for me whenever I want to come over and do whatever I want to do to you, all right? Or we're going to bomb with our new weapon, the atomic bomb, each and every big city you have until we, I don't know, destroy you forever. Or you, as I said, you say, well, I'm ready, baby doll. And the Japanese said, no, you wouldn't commit a crime like that. But they did. They bombed Hiroshima. Hiroshima is not a military base. And even if it would be a military base, would that give the Russians the same right to use nuclear weapons on a Ukrainian military base? Let's say Russia tomorrow hits a military base in Ukraine. Do you think these guys will say, well, it's fair, it's a military position, military target with a weapon? Well, do you think they will say that? No. Now imagine the Russians will hit, let's say, Kiev. It's a war crime whatsoever, clearly, right? But it was not a war crime, and it's not, that we, under those either bent over or we're going to queue forever up, that was not a war crime. Then they dropped in Hiroshima, right? 6th of August, 1945. Then the Japanese says, no. And then they dropped on Nagasaki on the 9th of August, 1945. And then if the Japanese did not say, okay, I'm taking my pants down, bent over, and wait for you, would have been Yokohama, if I remember correctly. And then I don't know, Tokyo, and then who knows what, Sapporo, or who knows what would be next. So they went on. They would have gone on. Let's say the Japanese never said, yeah, we surrender. The Americans, already a pattern, boof the first one, boof the second. That means they would go with the third, a fourth. What would stop the Americans if they said clearly, either unconditional surrender or... So that is, I think, something that it could be called something with close to, if you try to destroy a nation like that, because there were civilians. Genocide, isn't that genocide? But anyway, maybe not. I don't want to go that far. My point is, these guys would have gone on and on and on. As a justification, they said, we're going to shorten the war of aggression because you aggressed us, remember? We didn't do anything to you. You just unprovoked attacked us in December 7th, 1941. Correct? And most people will say, yeah, is there anything more to that? Yes, there is more to that. And you can see the 1941 and 2022, February 24th, a little bit like that. Remember, it's always an action and a reaction. Now, was there any action before and was there a reaction in 7th of December? Was that a reaction? Most people will say, no, they're just crazy, they're just imperialistic Japanese. That's what they will tell you, but that's ignorance. You have to read about it. Now, if I tell you, you cannot go and buy your groceries for anywhere I tell you, and you want to go, what would you do? You either starve with your children, or you beg me, and you become my servant, or you will try to kick me in the balls in, let's say, Hawaii. No? All right. Nevertheless, I'm not promoting the Russians doing that. But what if they do? Do you care? Do you take that into consideration and justify it as you justified it? The only thing that you would say is, yeah, but we were right because we were attacked. It doesn't mean that you're attacked, you can commit crimes. So if someone punches you, it doesn't mean you have to go and, take care of his wife or something and his children and so on. That's still limit. Self-defense, yes, but still barriers. Unless only some can have barriers and limitations, others cannot. Well, obviously not. That's the situation. So I think that within not a year, 6 months, we will have our people fight or at least is going that way. If the Russians don't lose, and I don't see how they lose with a nuclear weapon, unless, as I said, not a nuclear weapon, thousands of nuclear weapons, let's say, and about 35 million of potential general mobilization. That means hoorah, and then really go towards the west. The West will go take refuge over the Atlantic if the Russians are coming, and you will stay over there and really enjoy Russian democracy, freedom, and Western civilization. Again. All right. Thank you very much for being with me again today. So get ready. Get ready. These guys are going to get us in a war. Are going. I don't see why not. Do you think they're moral? Do you think they... Because they're not going to be them. It's going to be you. Us. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.